The last time we spoke of Lazarus, it was just 2 weeks ago. And it was in the context of God as living water. If we believe in God, we will never thirst. Here in this life, our thirst will never be quenched. But that is not so with God. We will never thirst. We also explored 2 weeks ago the question of whether or not bringing Lazarus back from the dead was what he would have actually wanted. And I'll ask you again to think about that. Was bringing Lazarus back the right thing for Lazarus? Lazarus had seen the face of God. Who that has seen the face of God would want to come back here to live and to thirst for all of their days? I would not. And here we are today revisiting this same story, but our perspective has shifted a bit, and it's more focused now on the resurrection, the life itself that God creates for us as human people. Throughout this gospel, Jesus has been demonstrating the ability to heal, and he is performing miracle after miracle after miracle. And you heard in the gospel that John said, Jesus knew that they were sick. Jesus knew that they were suffering. Jesus knew that Lazarus was dying, and yet he waited 2 more days. Why? Why did he do that? And that is certainly the impetus for Martha and Mary both saying, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. So there must be a reason for this moment with Lazarus to come right now in this place in the gospel for a second time. And we suppose it is for the purpose of demonstrating God's saving power. He's also exposing himself as the Messiah and risking his own safety to do it. Now, we know the story of what happens next, but at the time, his disciples did not. And Jesus is choosing this moment to expose himself, thus making himself unsafe. This story, when paired with the Ezekiel reading, is asking us to consider those dry bones. We're given these 2 stories together of God's saving miracle and eternal life. And that's purposeful. Ezekiel's dry bones are so descriptive, gripping really. Bear witness, God says to Ezekiel, prophecy to the bones, and I will add sinews and flesh. Prophesy and tell what you know of me, Ezekiel. I will breathe life back into these dry bones. I don't know if they're creepy or engaging, those bones. But I will say that it is an important moment to hang on to right now as we are in so much flux, so much change, and so much loss that we also may feel like dry bones. Faced with so many situations to overcome, many among us may feel at a loss for how or where to help next. At a bare minimum, we in this church are working to decide how our services will continue when we have 2 spaces open again to worship in. At a maximum, though, we're rebuilding our very society. We're coming back from COVID, some of us just from a week ago, wondering how to reconcile racial injustice and white supremacy. We are witnessing the excoriation of women's medical rights, the vilification of trans youth and their supportive parents and physicians, and an exponential increase in the unhoused populations in our major cities as the cost of living increases. At the same time, we've lost funding and support and volunteers for many of the nonprofits who typically respond to these sorts of issues, because those who typically support them have lost so much during these pandemic times that they no longer have the energy to support them. Dry bones. And in this very moment, in the gospel and in our world today, God is choosing to tell us that we don't have to know what comes next. We simply have to prophesy. Tell the truth of who I am, God says, and I will bring these dry bones back to life. I will reincarnate this love that you had for Lazarus, for people, for me, God. I will add the sinews and I will make it flesh. You say it, God says, and I will breathe life into it. You speak to these dry bones that are lost to themselves, and I will breathe life into them so that they are once again living and breathing and possible. That's beautiful. We're currently working towards the possible, loved ones, whether we know it or not. We at St. David's prophesy every single day at the Capitol, at this Ambo to you, and downstairs at Trinity Center. And we would love for you to know more about it. So Kristin is joining us today to share with you a little bit about what they do. Thank you for being here.